a passion for what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give up.
So welcome to another episode of Jonsuntitledpod podcast, a partner of MoshPitNation.com. This week's guest is Greg Tribbett, formerly of Mudvayne, formerly of Hell Yeah, currently of Audiotopsy, and formerly and currently of this podcast as my co-host is Daniel Terry. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I just woke up. So I'm ripping and roaring, ready to go.
I gotta say, before we talk a little bit about this this Greg chat, it's been kind of fucking wild over here for the podcast the last week.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, louder than life.
Louder than life, bigger, better than ever. Kentucky's largest rock festival, September 28th through the 30th at Champions Park in Louisville, with special appearances by 9 Inch Nails, Alice in Chains, Godsmack, Deftones, Shine Down. Louder Than Life with 9 Inch Nails, Alice in Chains, Godsmack, Deftones, Shine Down, Breaking Benjamin, Slash, Bush, Ice Cube, Billy Idol, Primus, the return of Five Finger Death Punch, and a special appearance by Limp Bizkit. September 28th, 29th, and 30th, 9 Inch Nails, Alice in Chains, Deftones, Godsmack, Five Finger Death Punch, Limp Bizkit, and more. Go to louderthanlife.com for all ticket, lineup, and festival information.
Doesn't it make you feel better?
Yeah, Louder Than Life. As of when we were recording this, got the approval yesterday, really very randomly, that I sadly, I did when I put into cover the festival, it was just me, so I didn't have the foresight to know I was going to have a co-host, sadly. So it will be me doing the interviews, maybe next year though, with the foresight to know that Dan lives in Louisville, and now that he is the co-host, try to actually plan ahead next year and have Dan be involved in it, so we can A, hang out, and B, interview bands together. And yeah, I can't fucking believe it. I get to go to Louisville and see what that's like.
Louisville's nice. I mean, I don't live there. I live in St. Louis, but
well, close enough.
It's only like a 4-hour drive, which isn't too bad. But yeah, no, dude, don't worry about the tickets. I only cried about it for like 2-3 days, just like real upset, throwing shit at a wall and all that. But not a huge deal.
Well,
nothing to worry about.
I don't know where you live, where it's been 2 to 3 days already, considering it's been less than 24 hours for me.
Oh man, it's just one of those mental states where it feels like an eternity, sort of deal.
Is that the state of not having a wife and kids? Just every minute feels like hours have gone by.
It really does. It really does.
Well, no, yeah, it's just wow. I honestly still shocked. I mean, I will say in the nicest way possible that this really fucked up a lot of plans that I had made with my wife for my birthday and family plans the week of actually Louder Than Life. But I mean, I guess this is a great problem to have, and everyone's been very understanding of the current situation, but very much looking forward to going to that. Also would like to take a moment to address our news with Joey Gonzalez going, I think viral will be a safe word to use.
Yeah, kind of unexpected. I mean, I knew somebody would be interested in hearing that interview, but yeah, it's gone off the deep end.
Yeah, first of all, in any of these situations, would just like to say thank you to Loudwire, Blabbermouth, Ultimate Guitar, interestingly enough, .com.
Oh yeah, they broke it down.
I think that was, as much as it was kind of a bummer to see some of the, things being said within it and kind of, I do like the fact, and, I had texted Joey when it started happening because, coincidentally, I got off the phone with Trey Williams of Dying Fetus and had a few friends reach out to me and be like, hey, your thing made the news. And it's like, oh. And, that was a few days after it had been posted, so I didn't think much of it at the time. But it was just one of those things where, and seeing it, Joey was like, oh, so what happened? And I go, oh, they're saying that basically, like, no one, just your quote that, like, no one reached out to him to cover the events and all that kind of stuff, or any of the bandmates. And he was just like, so they're reporting that I got mad that they didn't ask us to report on the event. And I go, yeah. And he goes, there's a lot of irony there. And I go, yeah, I just, want to make sure that, you're not getting in any shit for it or anything. And he goes, no, it's fine. And then even had made the comment that Phil thanked him for, and indirectly you and I, for allowing Joey to kind of actually speak and have a platform to speak on the events and kind of get a completely different perspective than what was out there. I had kind of a problem figuring out how I felt about this, because on the one hand, any time someone shares something that I've done, it's pretty cool, and to see the comments and so forth, and to kind of have someone's voice literally be heard beyond maybe the reach that I have with this platform currently. But the thing that sucks is that after it gets to that point, I don't have control over the narrative anymore, and neither does the guest that's on. It becomes this other thing, and I don't know. I just want to take this time to publicly apologize, and I've done it. I've reached out to Joey and to Matt from King Parrot, if they got into any trouble for talking to me. But I just want to say thank you to those guys again for taking the time to talk to us at length and for being so honest. And I think the thing that kind of sucks is sometimes there might be 5 to 8 minutes worth of audio, but it's not. It's maybe half of a sentence that gets ran, and a lot of people aren't going to look or listen beyond what they're reading, and that's kind of the unfortunate thing, because the whole point of a podcast is to talk at length. And based on just the numbers of shares, comments, retweets, and all that kind of stuff between the various platforms this episode had been shared on, I can definitely tell you not that many people listened to the actual episode, but those who did have said, Blue is right. You don't hear people like Blue anymore, or like Matt, who spoke from the heart, spoke about the person behind the event, not the incident. And that was really the focus of that, was I wanted the human side of the story to actually come through. And I believe it did. But I just kind of wanted to take a moment, or a few moments at this point, and just say that, thank you to those two guys, and thank you to Liz for helping set up that interview, and I'm sorry for any of the problems that you had to deal with as well. But that hopefully people... I don't know. Hopefully people realize that there are people behind these conversations.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we are just guys that talk to people and have real conversations. If we had run into them, if we'd run into Joey at a bar and we're talking after a show, we would have had the same conversation, And I think it's always just been it's kind of always been the goal to just have real conversations that we think people would want to listen to and would find interesting, which we would hope the things that we find interesting are what, listeners would find interesting. And, I think in this particular case, I think it was just a little tough because it's hard to go against whatever the popular narrative is. And everybody kind of has in their mind their own narrative of what that situation was. And so I think something like this, unintentionally, I guess, may have just opened up a little bit more than we had foreseen. Yeah. And but it just was what it was. I don't regret that conversation at all. I thought we had a good chat, and like I said, somebody like me that was a little bit more of a hater kind of came around after that. So I think there's value in that. I think what was said was it has the potential to have that positive effect.
Yeah, kind of speaking more to the chat that we're actually here to talk about.
Yes.
I got to talk with Greg. Sadly, Dan got stuck at work again. which is fine. Got to make that money. But
Yeah, John only pays me like 75 cents per day, so he said he might bump me up to 125 a day, but I'm gonna have to make some headlines first.
But it's something that I had asked, and like I said, I'll just say it now, so that way, like, it won't catch anyone. Won't be like, oh, you knew you're baiting. First of all, anytime I would even say anything about Mudvayne to ask a question, I also mentioned the guys in Scrape because that's fair. That's the fair way to ask anything involving a band that has members of other bands in it. But the whole point of me asking do you feel like you get judged unfairly for the bands that you two or all four of you have come from? Because I assume the Scrape guys get it too. Like, we're like, oh, this doesn't sound like Scrape. And it's like, well, no, it's not fucking Scrape. Just like it's not Mudvayne. However, the answer I got was definitely not the one I was expecting to get out of it. But just, in light of the Joey episode and everything that was said about that, this interview was interesting. As I kind of ended up finding out, Greg is a rather to himself individual, and which would explain why I don't see a whole lot of interviews with him. So when I kind of realized that when trying to do my research, I was like, well, I don't know much about him because he doesn't actually do a whole lot of interviews from what I've seen recently. And, I just want to take the time to, again, say thanks for coming on and kind of talking about the record and the band as a whole. And, we've been blabbing enough at this point about a whole bunch of things. So let's get into my chat with Greg from Audiotopsy, and we will talk to you afterwards. So I have the pleasure this early afternoon of talking with Greg Tribbett of Audiotopsy. They have a new record coming out November 2nd via Megaforce Records called The Real Now. How are you doing, Greg?
Doing good, man. Just getting over the flu, actually. So it's been a suck-ass week.
Well, hopefully, hopefully the reception to What Am I that just came out this past Friday as of when we're recording this, hopefully the reception to that is making you feel a little better.
Yeah, it actually is, man. A lot of people are digging the song, so I'm really proud of that.
I always find it interesting how a band figures out what the first single off of a new record is going to be. And you guys chose a song that's pretty late into the album. So what went into the process of choosing What Am I as the lead-off single as opposed to, say, War or even Panic on the Airwaves?
I think What Am I just kind of relates to basically the title of the record.
Okay.
The Real Now. What Am I is a song about finding yourself, your true self, your true being. And The Real Now is kind of relates on living in now. I don't know if you can make sense of that, but it's like, make the now the primary focus of your life and not the past or the future, because now is all you got.
Right.
And honestly, I like the riff.
It was kind of interesting in looking at the album title, and I know there are a few bands out there over the last 20 some odd years who sometimes use their song titles to speak more to the album title. So you got What Am I? The Real Now is What Am I? Panic on the Airwaves, that's The Real Now. War is The Real Now. So I didn't know if that was a concerted, like, something you set out to do and kind of play off of the album title and the album songs as kind of a play, what am I looking for? A volley between each other to kind of get across a bigger concept.
Yeah, it just kind of naturally happened. I mean, it was, focused on a little bit within the band, kind of because of the album title and stuff, but the more songs we wrote and the more lyrics that Billy wrote, it just kind of happened that way, man. Just kind of came together. I was really happy with how everything turned out, and we're just kind of bizarre like that sometimes,
Yeah. It's been 3 years since Natural Causes has been out. And, in a day and age, where there's kind of an oversaturation of people putting out a barrage of material that doesn't necessarily mean anything because they're just trying to stay relevant. What does it mean to you guys to really take the time to write this second record as Audiotopsy?
We were in no rush. I mean, we're not out to, make this band the next Metallica or anything like that. That's not even in our heads. We just wanted to come together, the four of us, individuals, and do some creative writing and put together what we could put together. So there's no rush to go out and I got to sell 30,000 records the first week or any of that stuff. Was never even thought about. It's just we wanted to write some good songs, put a record together. When we got it done, then we'll put it out.
Do you think, I always find it interesting talking to people who have been in the music industry for a long time. And, between all the members in the band, having been in Scrape and Mudvayne, obviously, is it interesting to see maybe where the music industry is now to where you're not expected to drop a record and need it to sell or, 30,000 copies or 300,000 copies, that there kind of is more of a long play, associated with it, like it kind of used to be, I guess?
Well, it's a lot different now than it was 10 years ago, even, 15 years ago, when, we were pumping out a record, tour for 2 years, pump out a record, 2 or 3 years, pump out another record.
Right.
Nowadays, it's like, I do realize that the newer bands are trying to keep up, and it's a lot harder for newer bands nowadays because it's such a fast food market.
Yeah.
And people don't listen to whole records anymore. They want that single that catches their ear or something, so people just are not patient, man. Patience isn't even relevant anymore in the music industry. It's like, just get it done, get it out, make money.
Yeah, it's very true. Yeah, and it's kind of that same mentality where it kind of made me wonder, is the rollout plan for this album to kind of do what almost every band is doing now, where you drop this single and then a couple of weeks later, here's the next single. And then, by the time the record's dropping, you have all but like 3 songs that you've already heard.
Yeah, we are definitely going to drop another song probably in the middle of October.
Okay.
And then I think we're going to actually maybe promote a song or have a song go to radio. I really don't know yet what's going to happen, but because the record doesn't drop till November 2nd.
Right.
But, all that is just to pump up the record, the release date, the usual thing. But yeah, you're right. A lot of bands are putting out half the record before the record even drops nowadays.
Yeah, it's just weird. I remember in the days of, even Deftones, as early as Diamond Eyes, they just basically put out a teaser track of what Rocket Skates was gonna be, and then I think Rocket Skates is really the only song. And it's like, if the one song that's supposed to be the lead-off single isn't enough to grab your attention, then, I guess it's not doing its job in being a lead-off single. But I just feel like I said, as much as the industry kind of tends to oversaturate now, that I feel like bands are almost diminishing their returns by more or less premiering the whole album before it's even out. And it's like, well, what the hell am I excited about anymore? I've already heard it.
Right. Well, that's definitely, we're not going to premiere the whole record, but maybe a couple songs.
Right.
That's about it. Yeah. But you know what? And maybe we are caught up a little bit into that kind of music industry thinking, because that is what it is nowadays. They drop half the record and then they hope people go out and make that first rush the first week to the records, because the second week, you're dropping 70-80% in sales.
Right.
I don't know, man. It's just all confusing to me, dude. I'm really over the fucking record business, dude. Just let artists be creative and do what they want to do, and get the big wigs out of the fucking ways. When that's kind of where I'm at today.
Is that why the band chose to kind of self-produce this record?
No, not really. I think it was, we did the last one too, but we had Dave Fortman had agreed to come in and do the vocals, so we agreed to do all the music and stuff, and then we had Fortman come in and do the vocals, which we were really excited about, and it just ended up that way. It just happened.
It was kind of interesting in the fact of, looking and remembering back to when the first Audiotopsy record came out, there seemed to be a really big buzz about the band with, the members of Scrape kind of coming back, a band that a lot of people probably hadn't thought of in a while. And, you and Matt, obviously re-teaming up to do something. And it just kind of seemed like, you guys got on a couple of pretty good tours But from a mainstream perspective, I feel like, you did those tours and then I didn't see much from you guys. So, I mean, kind of what happened in the 3 years roughly that I guess not 3 years total, but in the few years, that the band wasn't quote unquote active, what were you guys doing?
Everybody went back to their day jobs.
Okay.
Everybody basically, and I mean, I started writing this record probably a year and a half ago.
Okay.
And it took a year to put everything together. We started recording, I think it was back in February of the vocals were February of last year. The guitars were literally, the writing process was literally a year ago in September.
Okay.
So it's kind of taken a while to put everything together, but we all live in different states. So I had to travel to Wisconsin, to Florida, to Louisiana, to this whole process to put this thing together. So it was kind of crazy.
How is I guess I'll just kind of ask this. I was trying to find a way to not really talk too much about either of the band's past, but I mean, it's kind of inevitable with the band still kind of being very young. But, I kind of have wondered, do you think fans unfairly compare this project of Audiotopsy to either Scrape or Mudvayne?
Absolutely. Chad is not the singer of this fucking band. And I wish people would figure that out.
Yeah.
That's what I hear. All the haters follow by, it's not Chad. It fucking sucks. I don't give a fuck about it. I'm like, dude, this is a whole different band, a whole different vibe, a whole different sound. It's not meant to be Mudvayne or sound like Mudvayne just because there's two other members from Mudvayne in it.
Right.
I mean, it's just, people are just, I don't know. Like I said, people have no patience for anything. And I know everybody's begging for a Mudvayne reunion and have been for almost 10 years now. And that's all I've been hearing.
on the one hand, though, isn't it seemingly kind of nice to have fans want something even? I don't know. I always try to separate myself sort of as a fan of something when I talk to the people for this podcast. But it's also kind of, hard to sit there and be like, yes, it sucks that fans are focused solely on the one thing and can't seemingly move on, but there's got to be one part of you that's at least like, man, 10 years later and you still want that. Like, that's kind of fucking cool. I wish you guys would get more on board with this, but 10 years later, a lot of bands I think would love to have that overwhelming support from their fans, like even after they haven't put anything out, that there's still such a rabid demand for it.
No, we absolutely do. We don't take it for granted. We're all flattered that everybody still wants to Mudvayne the tour and do a new record and come out and do all that stuff. The thing is that everybody is in 3 different bands and kind of doing their own projects.
Right.
And, there's no time for that right now. And people just need a little more patience. I know 10 years is a long time, but, and they're doing the same thing. They say the same thing about System of a Down. They haven't put a record out in 12 years, and the fans are begging for them. And I think it's the individuals in the band is just priorities,
Right. Something I also kind of wanted to touch on, if you're okay with it, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, that's fine. In light of Vinnie Paul passing recently, it kind of made me start thinking about when Dime had passed and there was just an influx of songs and music that had been inspired by Dime's passing, most notably with Zakk Wylde doing In This River. And it made me wonder, with you having spent time obviously with him in the beginning of Hell Yeah years, if you had been inspired to kind of write something as a result of the tragedy of Vinnie Paul passing at all.
Well, I'm not going to lie, I did think about it, and I do think about it, but what I would do or who I would do it with, I don't know yet.
Okay. I didn't know if there was like the demo stages of maybe of a new Audiotopsy song inspired by that maybe you guys have been sort of working on.
No, there's nothing like that going on. I mean, the record's done. We're not planning on writing anything else.
Okay. Yeah, that was the other thing, too, with the new Audiotopsy. I don't know, is it technically... It's a full length because it meets that requirement, because I never know when it's an 8-song, if that technically is an EP or if it's an LP at that point.
I don't know, dude. Okay. I just consider it eight songs
okay.
Is a piece of... an all-around piece of creative art. whether it's 4 songs or whether it's 8 songs or whether it's 14 songs, You know, and I've heard some shit about, oh, it's only 8 songs on the record. Well, you know, it was the 8 songs that we wrote, and I didn't want to feel pressured into writing 2 or 3 more songs when we were focusing on the 8 that we had.
Okay. That was sort of where I was going with it was, you know, some people will put out 8 songs and then magically you'll find out that actually we had 16. We just put out this 8 in this collection, and then, you know, maybe half a year later or so it's like, or a year later, it's like, hey, by the way, here's the other half of the record we wrote. We didn't tell anyone we had another half. So I didn't know if this was kind of that diversionary tactic per se, where you're like, yeah, we have these 8 and we wrote more and we got another record done.
No, man, we really don't have any leftover songs. I really don't work like that, honestly.
Well, I mean, that's good to hear, because I always enjoy, because it makes me wonder when people sometimes, you know, sit there and say, oh, we had 30 songs going in, and you get 10, and then it takes, you know, a couple of years to write another record, and like, well, what happened to those what happened to those other 20 songs you talked about?
Yeah, that to me is a waste of time, man. If you go out and write 30, 40, 50 songs and you're going to pick 10 or 12 for the record, I mean, what's the point?
Yeah.
I mean, what are you doing with all the other songs? I mean, do they actually suck? You know what I mean? Then you should be sitting there questioning yourself, why do I have to write 30 songs to put 10 songs on a record?
Yeah, I definitely have never understood that. I mean, I can understand the concept of snippets or 40 ideas, excuse me, but as far as, you know, when people say we have 40 songs, it's like, well, yeah. What
I can understand riffs.
Yeah.
You know, but full songs, fuck, you might as well put together 4 records and, you know, pace it out for the next fucking 8 years.
Yeah, it's something I've never understood. But I think it speaks to, like, even much like you just said, where it's like, well, I guess those songs sucked. But then at that point, it's like, why even mention how many you had? It's just like, you know, I've always been more of the mind that I think it's, you know, more commendable when it's, you know, a situation like you're saying where I wrote 8 songs. Those 8 songs are the 8 you're hearing, and we spent a lot of time writing those. So I don't know why, you know, why you want more when the one you don't even have what I've just given you. So.
Right. You know, and plus, you know, when you're in a creative headspace, you kind of want to stay there.
Right.
And there's a line of where, you know, when you got writer's block or whatever, it happens. You know, it's like, fuck, you know, I don't know what I want to write today. I don't know what I want to write next month or whatever. But if it comes to me, then I'll sit down and I'll write it, you know.
Yeah, you know, kind of speaking to that, I feel like a song like Hurt Down, actually, like when I was listening to that, I can really envision that all over like active rock radio. And, you know, that's another example of, you know, I feel like you have a lot of strong songs on this new album that it's like, man, how hard is it really to pick, you know, the first song that everyone's going to hear? But then, you know, I also kind of wonder too, with the second record, you know, a lot goes into that because I feel like it's a second chance kind of to either reestablish what you had done from the first album or push some of the boundaries a little further than where you could have when you're trying to reintroduce yourself to fans as this new thing. So what was that, you know, were you kind of cognizant of that when writing some of the material for this album?
I was, you know, I kind of wanted to push the envelope a little more from what the first record was because, you know, we didn't really know each other on the first record. Now after doing a few tours and actually sitting down and writing and doing all that, you know, we know each other well. And that's another reason why there's only 8 songs on it, because that's all we concentrated on. We weren't pushed to write a bunch of songs, you know what I mean? It's just like, I mean, there's some different stuff on there, and I agree with that. Hurt Down is probably, you know, radio friendly. And actually, Billy is the one that wrote it on acoustic, and I took it and did my thing to it, and then we made it into a rock version and put it on the record, you know.
Yeah, that was one where I could totally see if you guys are doing a tour hitting, you know, random towns with, you know, radio stations, you know, hey, we have Audiotopsy in today and they're going to play, you know, acoustic version of Hurt Down and go see them at, you know, the show tonight. So, I mean, it's like...
I'm not saying that's not going to happen.
It's one of those where sometimes I wonder if that even, you know, like you've said several times throughout this already that, you know, there was no pressure to do anything for Megaforce at all. And anything like that, but it's just one of those from an outsider's perspective. It's like, oh, I know I see a lot of bands in your boat doing these kind of things, and so it makes me wonder. It's like, oh, like we can kind of play around with this one a little bit, and maybe that will allow us to kind of get some, more looks than maybe other bands who aren't able to kind of reproduce their sound acoustically for, different demographics.
Right. Well, that goes back to, picking the first song off the record. There's a lot of songs on this record that are accessible that I think to people, that people will like. And it just comes down to when you with a record and a new band, that first song, man, if it sinks, you're pretty much fucked. Because nobody's going to want to listen to the record. And it'll go around as word of mouth. Oh yeah, I heard that song, fuck, I'm not even going to listen to it. That kind of shit happens. So you got to be careful with the first song that you put out. And I think the song that we chose shows a heavy side, it shows a melodic side, it shows a total side of Billy's voice. And I think it's, it's hooky to people's ears, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely interested to I did a little digging to see the comments on the new song and obviously the rollout on social media to it. And it's weird to kind of cover that a little bit.
Have you heard the record?
Yeah, no, I have the record, yes.
Okay.
But it's always interesting to just kind of see what fans think, because I mean, inevitably those are the people you're trying to please. But, kind of like we hinted on earlier, sometimes it's just like, why only 8 songs? And it's like, well, you haven't even heard the 8. You're bitching about it after only hearing one song, or this doesn't sound like Scrape,
right,
or this doesn't sound like Mudvayne, or this doesn't sound like Hell Yeah, or insert whatever. And it's like, why? What does that have to do with, What I Am? We just released a song. What about that song? Like, it's very, I feel like, maybe
people just need to broaden their horizon, dude, and not be so short-sighted on, and persistent on what they want.
Is it, I mean, because you were in, all the bands, all of you guys involved were around before really they had the fans had a voice to say such a thing, directly to you. Is it kind of weird to put something out and just get like instant feedback? Like, I feel like I would almost prefer it how it used to be, where it's like you put something out and you find out how people feel about it by them actually paying for a ticket to come see you and having to say something to you.
I absolutely prefer it to be the old way.
Okay.
No doubt about it. I don't really pay attention to any of the Facebook stuff or any of that. I'm not a social media dude. I'm a private person, basically. And, I would prefer it the old way because, like I said, nowadays, man, it's fast food world, and it's in and out. And you got to hit them in the face with it. And if you don't, then, you're done.
Yeah. Kind of in wrapping up, obviously the album comes out in November, and I'm sure there's a longer plan to roll out with touring information and so on and so forth. But I mean, what can we expect for the rest of this year from Audiotopsy?
Well, definitely a couple more songs will probably come out. The actual radio track, I think, is going to drop in November.
Okay.
Other than that, I'm really not sure, man.
Okay.
So we don't have any touring lined up for this year.
Okay. It's I wasn't sure if I was going to bring this up, but I figured I would see how the interview went and then maybe bring it up to you. But so you guys had a drummer from an old band, As Cities Burns, I believe is the band name, and he was a driver for you guys on one of the first tours you did as Audiotopsy, I guess, for a very, very brief amount of time, and then ended up going on the Dudes and Emery's podcast, the Bad Christian podcast, and they were like, what happened? Like, you had this gig, and what happened? Like, you're already off the tour. And he was like, oh, well, I got pulled over randomly, and I don't remember what the reason for getting pulled over was exactly, but it was just really random because they were like, well, did you get to talk to any of the guys? He was like, no, I'm kind of antisocial, and I think that was the other reason that they didn't like me was because I didn't talk to them. Like, so do you remember Aaron driving for you for the very brief time that apparently he did for, I think, a day or two, I think is what it was?
Is this someone you know?
No, I don't know this person at all. It was funny because I've been re-listening to that podcast in the last couple of weeks, just because I'm all caught up with stuff, and he happened to be on Aaron, that is, again, and he was talking about how now his band's back together, so on and so forth, and they had made the mention, they're like, oh, you're not going to try to be a driver for other bands anymore, and he was like, no, I did it that one time, and I just have no interest in doing it again, and it reminded me of that, and because it was for you guys, I thought it was kind of serendipitous that story came back around to me, like listening to it when I hadn't thought about it or heard anything about it in years.
I have no fucking idea, dude.
Okay.
Honestly, I've never heard of the guy.
Okay. That wouldn't surprise me.
Maybe he did try for us, but maybe that's why I don't know him, because he never talked to the band. I don't know. But it's definitely not because of the band. We're a bunch of fucking dickheads or assholes. We're about the nicest guys anybody can get along with.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
No,
I would have to bring that up with the rest of the band, actually, to bring my memory back, because I don't remember that.
Regardless of all of that, before I have you plug your socials, or the band socials. But before we do that, I usually like to play these episodes out to a song. So what would you like me to play it out to, and maybe a quick little story about it?
I think maybe just a new one would be fine.
Okay.
What am I?
All right. And where can everyone find the band on the socials?
The normal Facebook, Instagram, Twitter.
All right. Well, Greg, thank you so much for taking the time to chat, and hopefully we'll see you on the road early next year.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thanks a lot.
So that was my chat with Greg from Audiotopsy. Dan, sadly, again, you couldn't be there, but what did you think of that chat?
Well, I know something very important. Chad is not the fucking singer of that band. Damn it. he didn't get upset, but he seemed upset.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, with, like I said in the intro, sort of, or skirted around in the intro, when dealing with a band like this, like, the focus isn't to talk about the old band, the old things that this person has done. And, I'm sure Greg, between Hell Yeah and everything, like, I wasn't even sure I was going to ask the Vinnie Paul question. But in light of, like I said, Zakk Wylde came out with arguably one of his best-known songs that, crossed over in This River, to his tribute that was to Dimebag, that was inspired by Dime's passing. So it's like, you can't help but, you were in a band with this guy, and maybe the surrounding story of why you're no longer in that band, it's irrelevant. At the end of the day, like, that was the guy you were close with, you were a bandmate of, and he's no longer here. So I can't help but think that potentially you've been inspired to write something as a result of that.
Yeah, I think, and honestly, we don't really know who else is asking him questions.
That's true, too.
You know what I mean? And there could be some people that are, like, really big pains in the ass asking very direct questions like, well, why isn't it this? Or why aren't you, like... And again, I don't know if that's happening or not happening, but his responses seem to indicate that was happening. And I think he thought, well, if this conversation is going to go in this direction, I need to just nip this in the bud right now.
Well, I mean, and even with his reaction to, me just basically saying, do you think fans unfairly judge Audiotopsy based on the output of the other two bands that are it's made up by? And so when he made that comment about, the whole Chad's not the singer of this band, that's fine. But at least, like, thinking on my feet, because obviously I don't have a response, like a question ready to go, with that being the response. But it was like, well, isn't it kind of satisfying to know that you have fans that are, 10 years after the fact that still want you guys to come back and put out an album? I mean,
yeah,
not for nothing, I'm not trying to shit on Mudvayne at all, but I mean, if you want to hear someone do that's one of the two of us. Go listen to the discography discussion on Mudvayne, and I think that's Dan and Joe and Jeff's thoughts on that record are pretty much a lot of longtime Mudvayne fans' thoughts. However, the caveat, even at the end of that chat, was, even if they were to come back now, I still would listen to it. I still want to know what they're doing because they're a great band. The individual pieces come together and write good, interesting music. So at the end of the day, it's like there are a lot of bands that go away and no one gives a fuck about what they do and one, it's like, oh, good, good riddance. But it's like the fact that 10 years later, people still want Mudvayne to come back, still want something from Mudvayne. It's like, I would feel like, damn, it's frustrating because I'm a creative person and I'm putting out this new thing. However, that's fucking sweet that I made fans that are so diehard and so loyal that they're still supporting me in this thing, even if it's a little bit with the caveat of like, well, we also want you to do this other thing because we want that as well. And again, that was a question that literally just popped into my head, or just a thought that popped in my head when he made that comment. It's like, well, let's try to turn this negative question potentially that you're tired of dealing with and try to make it a positive thing.
Right.
I don't know if I spun it well enough.
Well, it's funny, you saying that people want more from Mudvayne, and that's totally true. And it's almost weird to me that, you would leave the money on the table on that, even if you're not a creative person, even if you were a greedy bastard, which it doesn't really seem like Greg is, and let's say, for instance, if he were a greedy bastard, if they were all greedy bastards and all they cared about was money, like, really, that would be, to do something as Mudvayne, even if it's only like a tour, or even if it's or a one-off or anything, like, don't even make it your full-time project. You're going to make enough money doing that to fund whatever project you want to do. Absolutely.
I think a lot of artists do that now. And there's, it's funny. I don't know if oh man, I'm starting to sound like Jamie Josta now. I don't know if I should say this on the podcast, so I'm going to not say who said this, and I'm not going to say, all right, let me think of a way I can say this. So long and short of it, I was talking to a friend, an insider friend, and Joshua Toomey calls me as I'm literally doing this. This is going to stay in the thing. Hold on. Let me, Joshua Toomey on the podcast. Hello, Mr. Toomey. You are on the Jonsuntitledpod podcast.
Fantastic.
What's up, Toomey? Or he probably can't hear me.
He can't hear you. No, Dan.
Oh, well, fuck you.
Good. Don't want to hear Dan anyway.
He loves it.
First thing I texted him the other day was, I bet he's rolling over in his grave that his podcast is shedding some positive light on Phil Anselmo.
Yeah, it's funny how that worked out for him. And he wasn't even sure. He was like, I'm not probably going to have nice things to say about this.
I loved it. Am I really on the podcast?
Yeah, no, we're wrapping up the intro and outros for the Greg from Audiotopsy episode.
Oh, nice. Gerg from Mudvayne?
Yeah, hey, it's Greg now.
He's moved on in life. He's grown up.
He's like Don Most.
Right. Awesome.
Can I call you back in a couple minutes?
Yep.
Okay.
Hey, make sure you guys check out the Talk To Me podcast, iTunes, Google Play, Podcast Addict, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you.
All right. I will be expecting my PayPal to have some funds in there.
Yeah. Keep looking.
Okay.
All right.
I'm keeping that in there, by the way.
That's fine.
Where was I, though? Well, in light of that random phone call. So anyway, I was talking to a friend that's in the industry, and we were talking about festivals and just kind of bands that may or may not ever appear on these things to promote ticket sales and so forth. And one of the bands that I mentioned, I was like, oh, I think a Smiths reunion will probably happen, just because no one thought the Misfits were going to come back together, and that fucking happened, and now they're doing one-off shows that make them presumably millions of dollars. And some of the names and numbers that this person threw out for like, oh, well, this band was offered blank amount of millions of dollars to come play this show, just this one. And then
Jesus,
this other band was offered blank amount of millions and millions of dollars, and they are close to maybe making that happen, but it hasn't happened yet. But it's one of those things where, I'm reminded of a Henry Rollins thing, and Jamie Josta talks about this on his podcast all the time. There's like punk rock guilt, where it's like, no, dude, fuck that. You got bills to pay. Like, there's nothing punk rock about being homeless and being broke. Like, if you can find a way to make money and sustain your life, then why wouldn't you do that? And like Dan was saying, I think if, let's say a Coachella, for whatever fucking reason, wanted to offer Mudvayne $15 million to do a one-off show, and they do all of LD50. Like, why wouldn't you do that? Because potentially that's going to put a bigger spotlight on Audiotopsy, or allow you to fund the other creative outlets that you want to do. And I fully support that idea.
I would have even put on the makeup,
Yeah.
if that were the case, Yeah, like, I mean, and I guess it's, as grown-ups now especially, like, it's easy whenever I was a teenager to say, oh, well, so-and-so sold out for money and blah, 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 blah. Dude, in my early to mid-30s, I cannot wait for my opportunity to sell out, And that's just mostly, having a wife and kids and wanting to do the best thing there is for them. And the best thing for them is to, have a home and, have food. So yeah, there's nothing punk rock about being homeless or always hitting people up for cash. Like, to me, it's more punk rock to take a style of music that was once thought of as unconventional and not popular and make a fucking couple million off of that and be like, yeah, what do you guys fucking think of that? I got here just by being good. Like, that's more punk rock to me.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I did a conversation last night with Jaden from Siler, and we kind of talked a little bit about that same very thing, just kind of making the music you want to and being unapologetic about it. And I think that's kind of like been the theme of the last handful of conversations between, Trey Williams from Dying Fetus and my friend Damon from Of Virtue, and now Jaden from Siler, is just, not being afraid to make artistic decisions that make you happy and make the thing you want to make. And I don't think you could sit there and say that Greg from Audiotopsy or, Trey from Dying Fetus or, Siler all sound at all similar. However, the commonality between all of them is just the fact that they're all unapologetically themselves and are finding success in that, because at the end of the day, people want genuine shit. They don't want, something that was just, oh, well, I know this is what you want, so here you go.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Toomey sent me a text that just totally threw me off.
This motherfucker's just ruining our podcast.
Well, I texted him. I was like, "Hey, you forgot to add the Pornhub link for Talk to Me," and he goes, "No, I'd probably end up accidentally sharing all the fucked up porn I watch." I was like, "Oh shit, okay." Well, shit, I totally lost my train of thought. I think the only thing I was going to add to that is, dude, Siler, great band. And then I was super disappointed that I couldn't be on that, but it was an in-person, and I wasn't going to drive 6 hours to Grand Rapids, so,
But I will say, we talked for an hour, just shy of an hour, probably like 50 some odd minutes. It was really good. We're literally looking forward to getting that out to you guys collectively. We're going to wrap up this episode, so if you would like to keep up with Audiotopsy, they have a new record coming out November 2nd via Megaforce Record called The Real Now. You can find them on Facebook, Instagram at Audiotopsy Band. Twitter is at Audiotopsy Music. I don't think Greg has any socials, and that's probably not too surprising after listening to that interview. Dan, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at DiscussMetalDan. You can send me an email at discussmetaldan@gmail.com. And you could even maybe check out my other podcast, Discography Discussion, at discussmetal.com.
And if you would like to keep up with our show sponsor, The Bean Bastard, you can find them at thebeanbastard.com. The Bean One, I believe, is what the coffee cart is called currently. Looks like it's just about up. The Square Reader POS, point of sale, not piece of shit, is up. Looks like it'll be up and running very soon. So if you were in the Buffalo, New York area, look out for that beautiful bean footage rolling around in your area and get some delicious coffee. You can find them on Facebook and Instagram over at The Bean Bastard. You can keep up with our show partner at Moshpit Nation at moshpitnation.com. Facebook is Moshpit Nation, West capital MI. Twitter and Instagram are simply Moshpit Nation. And if you would like to keep up with the podcast, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube over at Jonsuntitledpodcast. Tweet at us at Jonsuntitledpod and email us at jonsuntitledpod@gmail.com. Go to the website, jonsuntitledpod.com. And if you would like to support us monetarily, you can go over to Patreon at patreon.com/jonsuntitledpodcast. Sadly, I've been pretty busy with doing in-person chats over the last couple of days, but the newest Patreon episode is just about done and will be up probably in the next, I'm going to say 72 hours. And Dan and I will probably work on another one. And I don't know, maybe we'll switch it up and do movies or something. But
that'd be cool.
We did one on pop music. I think it's kind of all over the place as far as our lists. Again, feel free to donate $2, get that episode, get the one we did over active radio rock bands. It's something we're looking to try to do, but basically just follow us wherever, engage, let's talk, let's talk football even. My fucking Lions shit the bed pretty hard the other day, and I'm not looking forward to tomorrow against the Niners, and Michigan's not really doing much better in football, and apparently hockey news, Red Wings are probably going to suck for the next 5 years, even though I'm not a big hockey fan, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it happens.
And we're going to end this episode as we always do with a song. And as you heard Greg pick, he wanted us to play it out to What Am I by Audiotopsy. Again, that record's coming out November 2nd via Megaforce Record, and it is called The Real Now. And we will talk to you next time.